the word brandy, the minds immediately go to France. It is, after all, the country that gave us the likes of world famous cognacs and armagnacs and calvadoses. It's just generally the country that most people tend to associate with the word brandy. But brandy can be found all across the world, and wherever people have been fermenting fruit into wine, you can usually find a brandy based around that particular fruit. If you go to Armenia, you can find brandies made of cherries, or if you go to the US, you can find brandies made of apples, of grapes, of peaches even. It's a very broad type of alcohol. There's kinds of brandy for basically every kind of fruit. What we have here though is a brandy made from grapes, so a traditional style brandy. However, it's not from France, where grape brandies that most people know of tend to come from. This one here is actually from Spain, and it is from the region of Jerez, which is traditionally known for making sherry. Now, this brand itself, it comes from the Lustau Sherry House, so they produce this brandy, and because it's from a sherry house, they actually age this brandy in some sherry barrels. Usually, like most brandies, will be aged in either American oak or French oak. However, this company in particular, being a sherry house, they decided to age their own brandies in sherry casks that they produce. Let me bring this closer. This is a brandy de Jerez Solera Reserva from Spain, and it is aged in Amontillado sherry casks. Now, my information tells me that this brandy is aged for about 3 years, give or take. After 3 years in a sherry cask, they then will bottle it. Now, as I said, this spent about 3 years in a cask, in particular a sherry cask. That might not seem like a lot of time if you're used to Scotch whisky, which can be aged for like 12 years, 15 years, 21 years even. When it comes to those kind of Scotch whiskies and Irish whiskies, the longer you age it, the more impact you're going to get from the cask it's in. So that's just generally what happens in the aging process. You would expect, like for example, if you had a Scotch that was 3 years old, it wouldn't have much of a flavour from the cask. You'd still be tasting quite a big dose of the raw spirit. However, in the case of this one here, this brandy from Spain, they aged this in a sherry cask for 3 years in Spain. Now, it might not seem like much, but when it comes to aging, climate plays a huge role. And what you'll find is the closer your climate is to the equator, you might have more extreme temperatures, and when you're aging, the alcohol inside the barrel, depending on the temperature, it will either get pushed into the oak and then pushed out again, depending on how the weather, because as you know, like liquid expands in heat and it contracts in cold. So what you'll find is that the alcohol will, as the temperatures increase and decrease, it'll go in and out of the wood, and as it goes in and out of the wood, it takes in certain flavors from the wood, so it will absorb in certain compounds, certain esters, certain aspects of the cask that it's in, and it will absorb that into the spirit itself, and that is one of the main components of aging. So the longer it's in the cask, the more the cask will impart onto the spirit itself. Now, if an alcohol is in the cask for 3 years, in climates that have got a very small range of temperatures, like say for example Scotland, where the winter is mild and the summer is mild, you don't get a lot of action, see a lot of seasonal action, so the aging process is quite slow. However, if you go into a more extreme climate, say like in the south of Spain, where you'll find the Jerez region, the temperature differences can be pretty big between summer and winter, And those temperature differences mean that there's a greater amount of spirit going in and out of the wood, and that will age the spirit at a quicker rate compared to, like, say, a spirit that was aged in Scotland or Ireland, where the climate is much milder. So that's important, because that means that even if this is only aged for 3 years, it's going to have a lot more of cask influence than if it was, say, aged for 3 years in a less extreme climate. So, 3 years in Amontillado sherry cask. What is Amontillado sherry? It's just a type of sherry that you can. Sherry is just a fortified wine. They come from the south of Spain, and they are just, you take a wine, you fortify it by adding some spirit to it, and usually an unaged brandy. You'll then go through some processes. Each sherry's got its own process. So you've got Oloroso, you got Amontillado, you got Fino, and a few other types. And each type of sherry is very different in its process. So they all have different flavors and different profiles. I won't get into it right now, because this review is not about sherry. It's about this brandy in particular. But what you have to know basically is Amontillado is a type of sherry, and it's what this cask has been, what this brandy has been aging in. So, if you look at the brandy itself, let's take it. We are going to take some brandy out now, and let's pour it into the glass. There we go. So, this is our brandy. I might have given myself a little bit too big of a pour here, but it doesn't matter. So, as you can see, it was clear in the bottle, but in the glass it's also pretty clear that this brandy is very dark. For 3 years. I don't think they added any caramel colour. They might have, but it doesn't mention on the bottle if there's caramel or not. So, it's possible they did, but given it's a brandy that's aged in sherry cask in Spain, I'd probably guess that this is its natural colour. I might be wrong, but it's just my guess. So anyway, this is our brandy. Now, let's get to the fun part, and let's taste this thing, shall we? So let me know it first. So, what we have here is we got a lot of raisins on the nose. So, we got raisins, we got some vanilla, we got, let me nose that again. A little bit of nuttiness. Yeah, I'd say almonds maybe. We get some more dried fruits, figs. What else can we get from it? Yeah, I would say definitely figs. Figs for sure. So this is incredibly rich smelling. It's very much like a Christmas cake in terms of how it smells. Yeah. So either a British Christmas cake or a Scottish Dundee cake. Yeah, very nice. Very, very nice smell. I believe though most of those notes are probably coming from the Amontillado cask, because this is usually the kind of notes you might associate with sherried whiskey. So get lots of rich, dark, dried fruit notes, raisins, figs, as such. Usually, I'd associate them with sherried whiskey. And it makes sense, I guess, because this is a brandy, but it's aged in sherry casks. So anyway, let's taste it. So, It's very nice. Upon tasting this, I get orange peel first. It's quite orangey, if that makes sense. As if there's an orange oil expressing itself there. But I also get vanilla. Vanilla's a big one. I'm guessing that's coming from the cask itself. Wood often gives a vanilla note to spirits. Go back to that. Yeah, lots of vanilla. Dried fruits, say almonds again, but roasted almonds, I'd say. This time it comes across more as a roasted almond note, as if you put the almonds in the oven for a little bit, roasted them for maybe about 10-15 minutes until they're slightly browned. That kind of almond note. Very nice. Go back to it again. Yeah, going back to it, more dried fruit, a lot more dried fruit, raisins. Again, the figs come back again. There's a lot of cask influence in this. I'd have to say there's a lot of cask influence. It's not like, I'd say it's quite different from most brandies, which is really interesting. Right from the get-go, at first you get orange, you get vanilla, and that kind of takes you along more of like a traditional brandy path, but then suddenly the dried fruit hits you and it just screams, "Hello, I'm Sherry!" So it's really interesting in that regard. Really, really interesting. Yeah, it just whacks you on the head with it. The sherry notes. So, what do I get in the end? Yeah, again, it continues on. The finish is quite long. You get lots of dried fruits. It's quite sweet, actually. I'm really taken aback by how sweet it is. Figs, prunes, really, really sweet dried fruit notes. Really interesting. And it goes down really well. It's really, really drinkable. You could really sip this forever. I mean, it's really hard to believe that this is only 3 years old. It's a really young brandy, but given how it tastes, it's really enjoyable, actually. I would say that this would probably not be the kind of brandy that your average like cognac connoisseur might enjoy. But like, if you knew someone who was really into like heavily sherried sherry bombs from Scotland, like maybe some Aberlour or even the what's that one again? Dalmore, and the Nomad Outland whiskey that's made by Richard Patterson. So that one it's a blendy whiskey, mostly comes from Speyside, but it's aged in PX casks in Jerez itself for I think it's about 6 years or so. Can't remember exactly, so don't quote me on that. But it's aged for quite a long time in sherry casks, and it really shows in the flavour on that one too. It's very, very similar to this. Lots of sherry input. So it's a really good sipper, I have to say. It's a really, really enjoyable sipper. And when I bought this, when I bought this brandy, I didn't buy it to sip. I actually bought it because I wanted to save it for Christmas and use it when I was making a Christmas cake. However, being curious, I wanted to taste it, and when I tried it, I was just blown away by how it tasted. So, yeah, it's really good stuff. And honestly, I kind of don't want to use it for baking anymore. It feels like it's too good for that. It feels like this is something that I'd rather just keep and just bring out whenever I feel like something sherried. It's really up there for me in terms of the sherry bomb effect it's got. So yeah, I really enjoy this one, and I hope this review is useful because honestly, I never see that many reviews of this kind of Spanish brandy, and I just hope that for someone who sees this in a shop, this review might be a little bit helpful. and give you a little bit of information about a style of brandy that's not really that common outside of Spain. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review.